Anyway, continuing where we left off. Um, Take the time to educate yourself on the preferences of your guests. A really good example is a very, very successful thing that I did a while ago, and it was an ultimate burger night. I love burgers. Everybody loves burgers. If you don't, then I feel bad for you, but I guess that's your preference. So literally, I invited everybody that I knew more or less, and said we're going to get together and have burgers, and they were like, "Yeah, awesome." So I went one step further and said, "Look, everybody likes their burger different. So, let me know what your ultimate burger is, and I'm going to make it happen." And I think I ended up having for this one, I think it was about 20 people. And literally, I told them, whatever you want, within reason. I wasn't going to put like a Rolex on their burger. But, I asked everybody, and those people who RSVP'd, I told them, look, if you don't let me know, I'm not going to have it for you. If you're coming, you need to let me know. So they all let me know. It took a little while, obviously, because I had everybody's preferences and stuff written down, but they loved it. And people still talk about it like 6 or 7 years later. And I'm not just making that up. It was one of the most successful events that I've done, even though it was just a silly little event for friends. But it's an example of knowing preferences and accommodating your guests and catering to your guests, how successful you're going to be. Especially the more when you have a big event and you can cater to the specific needs of individual people within that event, they're going to love it. They're going to absolutely love it. So next, if you do know your audience, right? And this is, again, these are all interrelated, but if you do know your audience, it makes the planning of your event infinitely easier and infinitely less stressful, right? So you are going to be a lot happier, your guests are going to be a lot happier, and these things are stressful, no doubt. They're stressful for professional chefs like myself. They're stressful for people who just do it at home for fun. It should be fun. You should want it to be enjoyable. So the more planning you do, the more information you have, the more fun it's going to be for everybody, including yourself. Next, we'll talk about budget. For this, I'd say, most important thing is know your budget and follow your budget. Like, don't try to spend money that you don't have. And on the other side of the coin, know your audience. It gets back to this, because you could have an infinite budget. If you're catering to a bunch of people, again, the non-caviar and champagne consumers, and you throw a bunch of esoteric ingredients at them that cost a lot of money, they might not be totally comfortable with that, and they might not enjoy their experience. So this is the first time I'll say this, but I'll say it, I think, probably a few more times, is that less can be more. Find out what your budget is. Find out what you can get for that budget. Stick to that and do the best you can. Don't try to make 20 different things if you have $100 to spend. If you make 5 different things, but those 5 things are awesome, you're going to have a better experience, and your guests are going to have a better experience, right? I'd also say that, do a little bit of planning. Try to do some menu planning. Figure out how much things are going to cost you and how far your recipes are going to go. And, if you're on a limited budget, choose recipes and items that you can make a lot of for a little money. So don't overspend. Don't needlessly overspend. And even if you have a large budget, don't needlessly overspend. You don't want to... but remember, too, like if you're on a sort of a limited budget, that, the overall experience is the most important thing. So if you execute well and you provide enough food, enough drink for people to be satiated or accommodated for, especially when they're not paying for it, when they're just coming over to your house or something like that to have a good time, the overall experience is more important. Nobody's expecting you to go outside of what you're able to do, and if it's people that they probably already know what your limits are, so they're not going to be upset if you don't have a filet mignon for every guest. Sorry. I'll say this too: if you have an unlimited budget or a significant budget, like if you got major ducats happening, consider hiring a professional. We do good work. It's not cheap, but probably the services that you're providing in your business aren't cheap either, because you do good work, right? They will take all of the stress off you and do a heck of a good job. So I would say that. I mean, and as well, if you are affluent and your guests are affluent, hey, sky's the limit. Go for it. If you've got a bunch of people together who are used to the finer things in life, um, knock yourself out, man. Go for the Chateau Margaux and lobster and all this kind of stuff. Steaks out the wazoo. Do it. No reason not to. Life's too short to not enjoy. But just be aware that being overly ostentatious in situations when it's not warranted can also make your dinner party fail. All right. One other consideration in this aspect is, a lot of people and a lot of food service professionals, chefs, cooks, servers in this, we do this very often, which is we know we're not necessarily destitute, but we're not rich usually. So a lot of times we have dinner parties or cocktail parties. We'll find the amount of people that want to come, have them RSVP, and then either have a donation thing going on where somebody will pay for most of the stuff up front, and then have a little hat or something. Literally, sometimes it's a hat where you can throw in a couple bucks if you want, or sometimes it'll be predetermined that everybody will chip in X amount of dollars, $20 or $30 or whatever, and then we'll make the party happen from there. And that happens a lot in the restaurant community, and it's a really cool thing to do. For example, for me, I've done this a number of times, and I provide the labor, and I'll make everything for everybody, but everybody will chip in like 10 or 15 or $20. It's a great way to go if you don't have a lot of money. It's a fun, and it kind of it helps bolster and raise that sort of communal spirit, which I think people are into, and if they're not into, they should be. Next is the topic of themes. They can be fun, but keep in mind that themes can be uncomfortable for some people. Like if you go all out on a theme and you say, "Hey, Bob, like we're having a Mexican sombrero theme," and he just doesn't like that for whatever reason, Bob might not come, but he might be a good friend of yours, so you want Bob to come. So err on the side of caution. But also, if you feel really strongly about having a specific theme, go for it. If Bob doesn't want to come, you'll see him next week, right? But just be aware, like some people might be uncomfortable by like really specific themes, especially if those themes include dress up of any kind. Just remember that. Food-based themes are fun, right? But just know your audience as well and provide kind of alternatives. Like for example, if you're doing a pizza night. A real easy consideration there is you might have some celiac or gluten intolerant friends, so you can still do a pizza night, but just tell your friends, be like, hey, I know you don't do gluten, so I'm going to make XYZ for you because I still want you to come, and they'll really appreciate that. Again, the more personally tailored an experience is, especially when people know you're going out of your way to satisfy them, the better they're going to like it, and the more success is going to be for you. So next, I would say that in terms of themes, like simpler themes are usually easier to execute, and ones that are more nebulous or non-specific. For example, you could have like a farmer's market theme or like a celebration of pork. This leaves you lots and lots of options, and people will still very much enjoy it, and you still have a theme that could be a defined theme, and it'll work very easily because you have myriad things that you can make that fall into those categories. Again, on the flip side, if you're doing like the cuisine of Eastern Laos, you're kind of painting yourself into a corner there. It's going to be difficult for you to do that with authenticity, and again, you might exclude certain people who don't enjoy that sort of cuisine. So generally, the less specific the theme, the easier it is for you to execute. But in some respects, it's warranted. And then if you combine food and other types of themes, this can be interactive and very enjoyable. If you have like an old Western theme where people dress up like people from the Old West, and then you eat like barbecue beans and steak or something, or like a New York theme, or a color theme, which could be like red or green, and all the food is either red or green. Holiday themes, viewing parties are easy, traditional, and any sort of fun games that you could have that are interactive will help as well. So interactive themes as well in terms of cooking are something you might want to consider. sushi, pizza, tacos, which can kind of alleviate some of your stress by having guests cook their own food, which does two things. One, it gets them involved in the cooking process. It gives them something to talk about. But two, and I hate to say this, but it's practically speaking, like if they screw it up, it's their own fault. Again, it's okay to not have a theme, but just if you don't have a theme, try not to be all over the place too much. If there's not a stated theme, at least have some sort of focus in your own head. Next, beverages, in particular alcohol, right? If you're having a cocktail party or dinner party, there's going to be alcohol involved. Three main categories, right? Beer, wine, cocktails. Generally speaking, these days, especially if you're in an urban environment, craft beer, craft cocktails, and good wine are three things you can count on. But again, know your audience. You could do a craft beer tasting party, you could do a craft cocktail tasting party, you could do a wine tasting. People do all those things, but depending on who's coming, like research it a little bit, and know if it's a craft beer party. Like a certain person might not want beer, so have wine for them. Or at a wine tasting, a certain person might not like wine that much, so have a cocktail or a beer for them. Very simple, but again, if you accommodate people, they're going to appreciate it, and it'll make your party more successful. Also, as much as I'm a fan of libations and intoxication, provide a lot of water, a lot of bottled water, and some sort of non-alcoholic options, because a good buzz at your cocktail party is awesome, and it kind of foments conversation and lively interaction, but falling down drunk people are going to ruin it. So kind of monitor people's intake and sort of see if you can control it, and then offer them options, and be prepared to call them an Uber or a cab. Continuing on, I would say that knowing your ability is crucial for this. If you have trouble opening a can of beans or boiling water, don't try and serve a 5-course fine dining menu. You're gonna fail. You're gonna feel bad, and your guests aren't gonna be terribly impressed. So play to your strengths. Use techniques that that you're really comfortable with. Use dishes that you've made before and that you're really comfortable with. Could even be something like your grandma handed down or your mom used to cook, or variations of those. And you'll do well. Don't use a dinner party as the first time you've tried to make like a souffle, or fresh pasta or something like that. Play to your strengths. That being said, if you struggle in one area, like a lot of people do, and especially home cooks, I think probably struggle in baking and dessert applications, don't be afraid to omit or revert to a store-bought option, as long as it's a good store-bought option. I don't normally recommend using store-bought products at all, but there's some good ones out there. Like I've had some good apple pies that came from the freezer section, believe it or not. That being said, it's okay not to serve dessert. It's also okay to have a dessert party. And be creative with it. For example, like if you're not good at making desserts, or you don't have the time, make like some milkshakes and some chocolate chip cookies. Super easy to do, very creative, and dope. I would say this too: if you're an accomplished cook, kind of the same as the above, don't be afraid to show off. Make some really cool stuff. Use some techniques and some ingredients people aren't familiar with. But always, be humble. Don't be conceited about it. Like, oh, I'm the bomb. Look at this. Just be like, here it is, and then let the compliments roll in. Just be like, thank you. Because you're here to entertain. You're here to you're there rather than here, there, anywhere. To provide a real hospitality experience. So, if you're being conceited about it, that's just silly. Let your work speak for itself. So the next subject would be, actually we're going to go to another video for this because this is on 14 minutes.